Hello, one and all, and welcome back to the Hidden Realms YouTube channel. I am your resident GM, Joshua MacGregor, and I am here with another episode of Roll Insight, the show where I talk a little bit about the shows that I run here on the channel. We haven't done one of these in a number of weeks. There's a new schedule of videos coming out. There is a whole lot of crazy stuff that has happened over the course of the Mockeries and the Reserve List, which is what we're talking about here, since episode 17 of each of those shows. We are now at episode 21 of each of those shows. So the way this is going to work for today is I am going to be doing this video, and I will be talking through everything that has happened in a rather short, or everything that has happened in a longer Roll Insight video where I go through everything that has happened in both shows from episode 17 all the way through 21. And that's going to be the video that goes on the channel this week. It gives me a chance to have a little bit of an editing break because a lot goes into these episodes, and my schedule is super busy. It just takes a lot of time to do them, and that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is the editing process and what's been going on there throughout this whole process, and the evolution of the series and the production values of the channel and all of that stuff, and how things will change going forward. So this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a big one, and we're just going to roll with it. So without further ado, let us go ahead and roll Insight for this episode. As a gimmick, rolling Insight, that is an 18. I believe that is the first time I've rolled high on this show since God Heist. It's been like a year since I've rolled that high. So you guys are in for some juicy stuff. Maybe the amount is what it is. Maybe if I just wait and do these after a really long time, I'll roll higher on the insight rolls. Okay, without further ado, let us begin with the Reserve List, episode 17. The Reserve List episode 17, which is called Forewarning Dreams. On their journey to the city of Menacil, banishing visions, warning them of dangers to come. Right. Okay. So what happened behind the scenes here was we were down 3 players. We were down Hugo, who plays Lydia. Not 3 players. I'm used to the new number of people. We were down Lydiana, who plays Hugo, who plays Lydiana. Oh my God. And Julian, who plays Tombar Jolly Snorkel. So I determined that this was the right episode to just do sort of like a transitioning over to Menacil. And what I will say is I have found that it's actually easier to run a game with fewer players. That's something that I maybe have mentioned on this series before. I will talk about it again, I'm sure. But the fewer people there are, the more time you can give to everybody who's at the table. And with the Reserve List specifically, we have had time constraints up the wazoo. It's one of the things that has led to me making decisions while in the DM chair. Is one of the contributing factors to the fact, like, I feel that I have been too railroady with this campaign, and I feel that I am too railroady a dungeon master in general. I am trying to be better, and I feel like the show which I run, which will be coming next on the channel after the Reserve List and the Mockeries are done, and that's another thing we'll talk about afterwards with the editing stuff. I feel like that is me having growing pains into being a little bit less of a railroady DM. because I believe your players have to be the driving force of your stories, and that's the place where I fall short. I feel like some self-analysis, some self-criticism here, but if a player makes a choice, more often than not, I will honor that choice. But with a few exceptions, and one of them we're going to go into a little bit later in this video for sure. But the place where I fall short is that the driving action of the story is not always the players, and that is just wrong. I want the world to feel like it has a lot of moving parts, that a lot of things are happening independent of the players, but the things that the players are directly involved in should be dealt with by them. There shouldn't be other people there who could deal with the situation. And that's one thing about Reserve List, which I will talk about when the Reserve List is completely done, for sure, because that's been a challenge there, more so than with the Mockeries, again, for reasons we were going to go into in a minute. So back to the Reserve List episode 17. We've got 3 players. They're journeying from Crusher to the new setting, to Menacil, and they get a forewarning dream. This was a plot point which I had thought would be a much bigger deal than it turned out to be over the course of the full campaign. Over the course of the whole campaign, there's a mysterious figure who comes to them in their dreams and shows them a warning that Brandon Lagazi has come back through this canopic jar style resurrection, this kind of Caspian Lagazi using his necromancy to provide immortality and new bodies to his descendants kind of deal. And that warning is meant to instill fear in the players, which I think it did, and also get them hooked into, well, who is this person? And hopefully when they get to the city, there is a specific place that they will want to go. They never went there. And you'll see me casually slide that storyline, shove it right in near the end of the Reserve List later on, just to tie up that loose end. But the idea of the dreaming and the nightmare being these opposing forces, which were going to be thematically tied with the story. I don't know how thematically tied they were, but they're definitely sort of there and explored at least somewhat. And I'm sure that in a future campaign, they will be explored even further than that, or even a one-shot or something like that. There's a lot more to this world. There's a lot more to explore, and that's one of the areas that I'm most excited to explore. What else happens in episode 17? Gwen has another conversation with her father, which I have to say that role-playing Edgar Galanis is one of the joys of this for me. I always find NPCs that I enjoy playing more than others, for sure. And, you know, even characters that I super adore, I don't always enjoy playing them as much as others. And one of the ones that I thoroughly enjoyed playing is Edgar Galanis, and having those very awkward conversations, being that enigmatic, having those secrets that he's just not willing to share, all of that. You know, I put together what Edgar Galanis' deal was fairly quickly, almost entirely on the spot, and then a little bit later on. And it has been so exciting to see what I thought was a very straight binary, you either know or you don't know what this guy's deal is, turn into this series of excruciatingly small clues, which are you know, teased out over the course of the story. Super fun for me, anyway. I know that Alberta finds that incredibly frustrating, and Gwen, by extension, finds that incredibly frustrating. Even more so, obviously, but it's fun. It's just fun for me. I'm a sadistic man. Episode 17. Oh yes, and then they were also introduced to the idea that the Arohani are being drawn back toward their country for this census, and raises eyebrows, but ultimately just becomes something in the background. Okay, let's talk about, rather than jumping back and forth between them, let's keep going with the reserve list. Let's go to episode 18 of the reserve list, and then we'll go back and we'll do the mockeries. So the reserve list episode 18, Bad Shrooms and New Rooms. We got Tom Barr and Lydiana back. We got our players back. And so what we did was we went back in time and did what they were up to over the course of that, traveling essentially to the city. And what we discovered is that Lydiana was plagued with nightmares and was visited by a little halfling girl. Now, here's a fun little insight tidbit behind the scenes. Back when Neil, good friend Neil, shout outs to one of the best players ever and a great DM, who without whom this channel wouldn't exist, and who will be returning for the main season 2 of the main Hidden Realms storyline, although there are going to be many main storylines that is going to be coming out. Neil was doing his Battle of the Bands campaign. He was doing the narcissistic tendencies, and I'm sure that they will show up for the big crossover event, or maybe they won't. Who knows? But you know, he's got a life, he's got work. Not everybody has as much free time as I do to run several campaigns at the same time. And but in any case, I came on as a guest, and I played a character named Sarah Hopgood, who was this, you know, 1st level Hexblade Warlock, 4th level College of Whispers Bard, who was a little halfling girl with a big knife, and that was her deal. And behind the scenes, she had sort of connections to the Legazis. That was sort of her shtick. And I showed up for one episode. It was inspired by this old movie, Rise of the Juggers or something like that. I can't remember what the movie's title was. I feel like it's something like that. In any case, it was a great one-shot. Not one-shot. It was one episode in the story which I was invited to. I was invited back as well, but the campaign didn't continue very long after that, or at least hasn't continued at this point in time. Maybe it will in the future. I played Sarah, and I thought she was great, and I wanted to bring her into my own game because I enjoyed her, and I thought it would be fun to bring her over. And I had this whole connection with Brandon in my head from the get-go. So this character, I misspoke when I introduced her, and I called her Sally instead of Sarah, and I kept calling her Sally and only realized that I made that mistake much later, and it wasn't a mistake because it's consistent within the show. So there is officially a Sarah Hopgood and a Sally Hopgood in the world of Cygalia, which I think is hilarious. We also, so yes, Lydiana, this was also the episode where Hugo and I had a conversation where I wanted to, Lydiana hadn't had a huge amount of screen time, and I wanted to change that, and I wanted to make Lydiana's story very focused and central to what was going on. And I asked him, I said, is there a way you want this to go down? Is there a vision that, because he was the one who came to me with Lydiana's sort of shtick and deal of being afraid and having this connection to the Shadowfell, which in my setting is the nightmare. And I saw some parallels, and I had some ideas. And I said, do you want to tell me how this goes down? Or do you want me to tell you how it goes down? And he said the latter. And so I took sort of DM control of what happened in those nightmares of hers, forgive me, of the characters. And as we will, we will get to in a moment with the latest episode of the Reserve List on the channel, Hugo knocks it out of the park as Lydiana. Like, absolutely phenomenal role playing from Hugo consistently. I feel like I sort of stumble around what the main ideas are meant to be, and he gets what I'm going for and runs with it. It's phenomenal, and it makes it seem like we've coordinated far more than we have. It's awesome. So huge shout out to Hugo for being one of the just a fantastic role player. It's always a pleasure to have Hugo in any of my games. That's what I will say. We also get Julian having a bit of a Morpheus training montage with Short Sam Gold. Short Sam, who is more than willing to help him gain some stats. So behind the scenes, roll insight. Julian is one of those interesting players that everyone else hates, who's been playing the game for a long time, because they're jealous, because he rolled the most average stats I've ever seen, ever, when he was rolling character stats, but he rolls very well. If he needs to succeed on a roll, he'll roll a 19. Modifier be damned, that's going to be an unnatural 20. So he's been doing great. He's been doing absolutely great with the character that he rolled. But nevertheless, I felt there should be an in-game reason for his character to grow in stats, as it were, to grow in dexterity and intelligence over the course of the game. And so that's what that was designed to be. That's what the book was designed to be originally, and then it just has a ghost in it as well, which is sort of my attempt of doing a storyline focused specifically on Tom Barr. Speaking of storylines focused specifically on characters who haven't had specific storylines yet, Isabin Zanula comes into contact at the end of this episode, I believe, with the general herself, Ciara Alunez, which, of course, is Zanula spelt backwards. I took a cheap gimmick and I did the thing. Cheers. Cheers to Miranda for also being a great player. And taking what is frankly an unacceptable curveball and a character who, if she knew her niece's true profession and walk of life, would be perhaps not approving of it. In any case, I wanted to give Miranda the option of having her own storyline that she could go for. I feel like there was so much more time and so much more room in this campaign if we had the run times each evening, because we average out at 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes of actual play time when we get together for these sessions. And we only meet once every 2 weeks. So a lot of real world time goes by, and not a lot happens in game, which is rough when you have a lot of players, because you want them all to have the time to really dig into their storylines, and you don't have that time, because you also got a main story that you got to get through. It's hard. It is hard. So Miranda, I wish I could have given you more time. I wish I could have given you more time. But this was my attempt to give a personalized story to her. Yeah. Yep. I think that's all the insight I have for this episode. The mushroom thing where Lydiana turns pink was just hilarious, and that wasn't planned in any way. That was just the dice doing fun things. I love the magic mushrooms in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. They are wonderful. Let's move on, shall we, to episode 19 of the reserve list, entitled Pointy Black Sails. Yes, in this episode, this is sort of like one of those grocery list episodes. They always happen, where your players are like, oh, we've got to hit up this place, this place, this place, and this place. And they go to do that. They go and they go to the Risky Reagents shop and meet Pointy Blacksails himself, Raynar Blacksails, who used to be part of Short Sam Gold's crew. And here's where we get the revelation that Short Sam is in the tome for the other players. Alberta, who plays Gwen, first of all, Alberta has a much broader knowledge of the world, of Cygalia that I have crafted. We've been playing together in this setting, in this world that I have made for a year, and she's got multiple characters in world. They all have slightly different perspectives on what's going on. Gwen specifically has more knowledge about this particular kind of thing and freaks out, understandably. Now, this is a game with a lot of newer players. Even Hugo, who is one of the most phenomenal role players that I know, has relatively little D&D experience. Whereas Alberta and Ralph have much more D&D experience, and of course, Julian and Miranda are entirely new to Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. Shout out to Julian and Miranda, by the way, for this being just a kick-ass introduction to the game. Like, what a fantastic characters to bring, what fantastic like moments to build. Anyway, I digress with praise for my players. So Alberta knows that when you've got a ghost in a book and he's talking about wanting to live forever and can only interact with people who touch the book, that sends off multiple red flags. And that's entirely intentional. And it makes me sort of love the fact that Julian doesn't question it at all and goes, oh yeah, it's Morpheus and Neo. Like I can just take this dead pirate at his word with all this stuff. It makes me so happy, because I think it will make for a great reveal later. This is me telling you, the audience, telling you that the pirate is a pirate. He is a chaotic evil entity who lives in a book. That's all I'm gonna tell you. It's obvious if you know the tropes, but if you don't know the tropes, if you don't read a lot of fantasy, if you're not into D&D and know the classics of D&D, if you don't know what a ghost stats are, the stat block of a ghost is a CR4 monster in the monster manual that literally has a thing called possession. It has an ability called possession on it. Insane. So that's the big 18 roll insight for that storyline. So Gwen freaks out. Everyone else is kind of like, it's probably fine, right? Raynar gets to have a little chat with Short Sam. and says that he's going to get a weapon for Tombar to use against Brandon Lagasse. When this episode happened, I didn't know what the hell that was going to be. I will straight up say it's like, absolutely, you put in a commission now, it'll come later. I don't know what the heck that's going to look like. I figured it out, though, so that's fun. And then, of course, Harathan Goresh comes. This was a necessary piece of exposition, I felt, because Harathan, up to this point, had just kind of like come to the city, but reintroducing the Goreshes as a credible threat felt important at this moment. And I think maybe laid on the pressure a little bit too severely from the way the players reacted. And I definitely did this both in this campaign and in the Mockeries campaign. I think it's the right thing to do, which is the threats mount, and the threats all feel like they're going to collide and come together at the wrong moment. It's like you have to start dealing with the different threats because they're coming for you, or they need to be dealt with. And it's starting to feel overwhelming. And there's a point where it starts to feel overwhelming, and then you start to get through them, and it's like, oh, this is a little bit more manageable now. Because I'm setting you up for a series of boss fights at the end. That's obviously what I'm doing. Obvious to me, not obvious to the players, which is why this discussion is being had. Cool beans. Oh yes, and then they go and they train with Master Ulani. Now, this is kind of fun. This whole organization, which Master Ulani and Gwen's father, Edgar Galanis, belong to, with the Munta coins, is something that I first developed as part of a one-shot, which became a two-shot, that I ran with Alberta in a different thing, which is why Alberta always looks like she knows. She gets so excited with these details and things, which is so much fun for me, because she herself as a player has insider knowledge of some of the stuff that's going on in this world. And so Master Ulani, being somebody who would accept a Munta coin, means more than this campaign will ever get into, is what I will say. And there are plenty of things like that that I do for the games that I run in the world of Cygalia. If you watch God Heist, Reserve List, Mockeries, and then the next thing that's going to come, there are so many connecting threads and tie-ins that you will find, just from straight name drops to characters crossing over to organizations with different members. That's part of the appeal, I think, and hopefully anybody who actually does watch this series will think so as well. But yeah, that's something I care very much about, is the overall continuity and the layers of loyalties and organizations that people are involved with. Means something to me. Cool beans. I feel like that's enough about episode 19 of the Reserve List. Let's go to episode 20. Episode 20. Episode 20, entitled Number 14. Oh, yes. Oh, boy. So, this is the one where I started to feel like the players were cast adrift a little bit. That I had cast the players adrift. That's not a good idea. And it was getting a little bit, I don't know, I want to say monotonous, but we're checking things off a list, rather than like a story happening. So I wanted to make things very simple again. And so the general gives them a mission, a quest. You got to find this thing. That mission ends up not being the thing that streamlined the campaign. But it was an attempt in that direction for sure. Then these guys, oh yes, then Tombar gets the sword. This is the point where I'd gone away, 2 weeks have passed, and I have figured out the weapon against Brandon Lagasse. It is a sword, and it's something that makes sense for Short Sam Gold to have told Raynar to go and get as well. Here we have this wonderful moment where Ralph says very clearly to everyone, is like, this is the DM hinting that the origin of the sword doesn't matter. And I'm like, yes, that is what I'm hinting. Now, my problem is that I'm always going to reward players for going and looking at things. In fact, I think that I potentially give more information than I technically should on lower rolls than I should. But I want people to experience the world. I want people to feel like they are learning about the world. And with shorter campaigns like this, getting information across quickly is a trick that I have yet to perfect. In any case, gets the sword, silver sword of unknown origins, and I will hint here, and I'm not going to tell you what the thing is, that the insight doesn't roll that well. Or in that 20, maybe you would have found out. But what I will say is that it ties into far larger designs for this setting and its ongoing storylines going forward. Because season 2 is coming, but things are planned through season 3 and beyond. This world is on a trajectory. Forgive me, I just got a text. One second. I'm just gonna reply to this text. This story in this world is on a trajectory, and this bit about the sword here, I promise, swear here, that this will come up again, and it will tie in somewhere in the future. And if you are somebody who watches this content, or if you're somebody who's playing in my games, and you're looking at this moment and you're like, huh, what is that? And why is it here? Why did he mention it in a story where the origin of the sword isn't going to matter? The reason is because the sword itself is meant to be mysterious, and there aren't multiples of them. This is the one kind of this thing. There are more of them, but this is the one that has managed to be gotten for this specific information that has been gotten specifically, that Raynar would have the ability to, and Short Sam Gold would have the ability to know about, and the ability to get their hands on. It is something enigmatic enough that it is not immediately clear in what way it can be used, and the mysterious origins of it, that there is something there. And that's what I will say, is that it does tie in to something bigger, and that's super fun for me. That's super fun for me. Number 14. Okay, yes, they go to the House of Skullduggery. There's a bunch of stuff that they go through there. And then they go to the library and get one of the most clutch nat 20s of all time. This is information that I've been sitting on for a while. And I talked a little bit earlier about how I thought that they were going to go to the Dreamers Lounge. That was the place with, I thought that they were going to go to the Dreamers Lounge and learn some stuff there about all of the stuff, about Brandon Lugosi, about the dreaming, about the nightmare, and about Edgar himself. They didn't do that, so this is where they learned this. This is where they learned that Edgar Galanis is actually born Edgar Goresh. And again, it's one of those things where I didn't intend for the revelations about this man to come in such piecemeal, tiny little parcels, but they do. And each one hits harder than the last one. And this felt this felt like very personal to Gwen. I feel like it didn't mean a huge amount to everybody else, um, which is fair. It's not their story, but is part of the bigger thing that's been going on with Edgar Galanis. Reserve List episode 21, Ursan Longbeard. So here's the real like behind the scenes roll insidey stuff. Wow, my hair's so much worse than it was the other day. It looked so good the other day, and it's terrible now. Anyway, I'm so glad that this blur is kicking off this little cowlick. Basically, what happened was there is a lost episode of the Reserve List. I switched computers, and you can tell that I switched computers because my my webcam got significantly better, and I've got this blur effect behind me. And what happened was I was transferring over all of the old files from my old laptop to this computer, and there were a bunch of redundant ones, and just from editing some of the like original files. And I deleted them, and they were on a micro SD. It doesn't matter. The point is that I accidentally permanently deleted the first episode with Joe, our wonderful, wonderful player Joe. When he joined us, and we had this great introduction for his character. He really brought it in terms of introducing himself and integrating well with the group, and it really kickstarted the story, back into gear. It ended up being that boost that I was talking about, that surging forward of the narrative that I had tried and failed to inject into the story before with the mission. Him coming and him having his mission was the thing that really kicked everything into gear. But I deleted the episode, so the show is one episode shorter than it should be. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over having done that. I feel truly awful that I did that. Horrible, one of these terrible mistakes. Anyway, so this episode we did a recap and then got on with the combat, the incredibly funny, good combat, which was such a joy the week before and continued this week, or the session before rather, and continued this session. There's some stuff that gets addressed in the episode that happened in the previous session that gets brought back up. Lydiana has a badass kill that she gets off. Gwen has this hilarious thing where she tried to get on the roof and couldn't do it. They all succeeded on a group stealth check and got a surprise round. Again, the surprise rounds are insanely good. Surprise round on the enemy. And then we get into this episode. I had played before with Joe through Ralph, through a mutual friend. And it was a game that Ralph was running. Ralph is a great DM. And it's super fun to play in his games. And Joe and I played together in that. He played a fantastic character and was looking for a game, and so he came and joined the Reserve List for his last number of sessions. Joe is great, and Joe is wonderful, and I can't say what I've done to his character yet, but it's coming. I don't know if there are any other like behind the scenes revelations for that episode. This is obviously the episode where we get Tomar going into the portal, and we get a little bit more information about what specifically goes on in the nightmare realm, which is pretty fun. The rules of the nightmare realm are a little bit wibbly wobbly. I know basically what it's like in there, but yeah, wibbly wobbly is the way I would describe it. Yeah, and Lydiana sees her alternate self again. And the cauldron happens. Oh, this is the episode. This is the episode I wanted to talk about. Because I did what I feel to be a DM mistake, and I did it for reasons which you might find relatable. Anyone else doing a DM stuff? There is a moment in this episode where Nurgle dispels magic on the cauldron, and what I should have done is said, it doesn't work. I didn't do that, and instead I asked for a roll, which implies that you can succeed. And as we all know, dispel magic just works on any spell if you roll a 19 or higher. So, if it had been my intention for the cauldron to be unassailable in this way, I should have just said that it failed. I did not do that. And that was a mistake. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was through my desire to have this MacGuffin thing stay on, I Deus Ex Machina'd a thing with Harathan whereby he called on his god to reactivate the thing. There's a reason I don't think this was a good move. I think cinematically, it was a great move. The reason I did it, the reason that I did this was the cauldron, the implications of the cauldron are super important for the story going forward. And for the finale of the show. The second reason that I did this was it also gave a cool moment to this villain, to Harathan, which again was very cinematic, which which would make him a credible threat going forward in the fight, which was going so lopsidedly. This is bad DMing. This is bad. This was a bad call on my part, because what I did was I ignored Nurgle's success. I ignored Ralph's success. Ralph is a good player, and he can fuck with me in ways I'm not anticipating, and I'm not quick enough often to catch how they're going to fuck with me before they do, before the things that he does are going to fuck with me that do. So I ignored what he was doing. That was not my intention at the time, and I realized it afterwards, and I thought, and you can see in the episode, you can see him saying, boo, that's, that was one of my spell slots, and my brain was going at a million miles an hour, and I didn't catch how bad that mistake was at the time. So Ralph, if you're watching, I apologize for that moment. I will, as with anything, it's like you live and you learn. You make a mistake and you move on, and you try not to make the same mistake again. So being cinematic and trying to tell a cohesive and an impactful narrative to those ends, I made a mistake, and I stopped being a game, and it stopped being collaborative for a minute, and it became the Josh Show. What can you do? Not that. Don't do that again. Okay, let's talk about the Mockeries. The Mockeries, episode 17. Suspicion Assault Watch. Okay, now there's some insight to be had into this episode. This session, the Mockeries are in Salt's watch, and some suspicion is thrown on them because, of course, there are UNTs sort of attacking, and one of them is a UNT, and the other one is dealing with a contract with the devil, etc. And basically, the insight of this episode is that later on, the miscommunication between Lily, the player playing Cloud, and the rest of us, specifically with me, was really egregious, and that happened because of the sending stones. Lily was saying one thing, which meaning one thing about the sending stones, and we all were meaning another thing, and it caused a breakdown in communication that lasted about 35 minutes long. I did my best to cut that down in the actual episode itself while keeping the thing, but it was one of those things where it just kept spiraling. We just kept repeating the same things, and the other person wasn't responding in a way which made sense from our perspective. And like, after we finally got there, after I realized, oh, you mean this thing, because of course you mean this thing, and not the thing that I've been saying this whole time. As soon as I knew that, I wwent back and I edited the episode, and I rewatched it, and I went, it's so clear that that's what she means, and I didn't see it for so long. If there is a takeaway to this, it is that you make mistakes, you're trying your best, and communication is the only way, and communication is hard. Communication is not easy sometimes, but you gotta do it. You gotta do it. Sometimes it just breaks down. Sometimes it just breaks down, and you just got to keep going till you make it work again. Yeah, we did get there in the end. We did get there in the end. I feel that I could have resolved it better. I feel like we could have, I don't know, we could have gone back. We could have redone the last bit of that session, or we could have called it and we could have come back and redone the session at a different time, or part of the session at a different time. A lot of this I really liked. I really liked the sort of like Ivor and the questioning, and they like them having to talk their way out of the situation. I really enjoyed all of that. And then they moved on from Salt's Watch and into our final area, which is Cesson Seal. Well, final area. Okay, that was the insight for that. Oops, that's my bad. The deck of many things. Holy crap. The Mockeries became, in this session, the craziest campaign I've ever run. Up to the point of the next series, because the next series has a moment. Minor spoilers, not spoilers for the new series that's coming, but basically something happens. I had a plan, and the plan worked, and that threw me for a loop. I whomped myself in the one coming, and it was the biggest whomp of all time. And it ended up being wonderful. This episode does a similar thing. These guys went shopping. I am going to confess something to the people of the internet. I find shopping boring. I find it boring. In the games that I run, I usually just I don't care a huge amount about money management. I basically I will put magic items along the path that the heroes can use. That, you know, they like, we talk about it outside of session. They say, I'm interested in one of these, and I say, cool. I'll log that in, and these, you know, can be peppered through the story. And I had established previously in a previous campaign that I did with Alberta that there are magic item shops, and there's only a select way to get the currency that is used in those shops. And I felt like that was exclusive enough that I wouldn't need to do shopping a huge amount of the time, but still give the option to people to go and buy magic items should that become a thing that they want to do. Brennan Lee Mulligan on an episode of Adventuring Academy, I believe, talked about this. It talked about how insane it would be, like how much more personal it is for a magic item to be earned or yeah, to be given to you as a gift or passed down from your ancestors or taken from a fallen, slain foe. How much more satisfying that is than to buy it in a shop, and how broken an economy based on magic items would be, because they'd be everywhere. And I feel like I've gotten a middle ground. I don't think it is. I still think it breaks the world a little bit to be able to get all this stuff. So that's on me. But the different ways of getting magic items, are quite fun, I think. Finicky Fergus, because Finicky Fillion is in the other city, I believe. Finicky Fergus is it's not quite as defined, I think, as Madame Mad with her auguries, her augury auction, and what that looks like. But I tried to find like ways of integrating magic items into this thing. Nevertheless, there was a shopping episode. These guys needed to get geared up. They wanted to be stronger. Absolutely fine. These guys want to go shopping. I will do shopping. They go into Finicky Fergus's. Seeing as it's already in place, seeing as it's already there, like keep it, and I will figure out a way of making it perhaps more exclusive in the future. We'll see. But like the Moonlight Scythe, for example, is such a more personal magic item than putting runes on your armor, or even some of the other stuff they end up buying later on. I can't spoil what they end up getting, but even like a suit of invisibility or something like that. The scythe was something that they like get. Helps that it speaks, but they get it and it is wanted and it's part of the story. Anyway, they go into Finicky Fergus's. There's character interactions and stuff. And at this point in the story, I thought that we were going to go into a heist session or two where they would have to break in to get the Moonlight Scythe back. And to that end, the compass leads them to a suit of invisibility, and they've got to talk to the guy, and they got to go get a crew and assemble a team to do a bank heist with the Legazis, with Miss Prosperine as the person that they're stealing from, as the antagonist. And this style works well for lower level characters, because at this point they were level 5, and Peter Legazi is beyond them at this time. Miss Prosperine would have been probably beyond them at this time as well. And a heist gives the opportunity for them to here's the thing about stealth games. Here's a little aside about stealth games. If you are in a stealth game, it is because you can't take people in a fight. It's because you're not in a shooter. You're not in Skyrim, where you can just tank your way through all of these guys and just kill people and go through. The reason for stealth games, like the concept of stealth games, is that you require stealth to survive. And without it, you won't survive. And with lower level characters, with higher level enemies, this works really well. It forces them to think about staying hidden, or about getting the drop on their enemies with like a surprise round or something, which worked very well for the reserve list and Brendan Legazi, to be fair. And so that's kind of what the plan was. But in the shop, I placed as a fun thing that was in the background, because I still apparently am an inexperienced DM. I placed in the background a deck of many things. Placed a deck of many things in the shop, and made it really accessible. I made it a really accessible item because Fergus didn't want it, and because there are horror stories of the deck of many things, and Lily and Daisy knew what it was. I could tell immediately that they knew what it was, And it's the most high risk, high reward thing that you can do. It is the most high risk, high reward thing that you can do in the game. Probably. Magic item in any case. And I put it in there for fun and for flavors. Like, yeah, there's a deck of many things in here. And they got it. And they used it. Now, I did give them the option. I said, you've got the deck. It is up to you whether we can draw for fun to see what happens, or you can draw for real. For real. And they decided to draw for real. And what followed was exactly what happened. I was stunned and amazed. 2 people were dead, basically, with the first pulls. And then the Fate Stitcher's Compass comes in. And rewrites everything. And they get 2 wish spells. And they wished to be strong. And I made them level 20 plus in response to that wish. Now, there were plenty of ways that I could have nerfed that wish spell. There were plenty of ways that I could have done something that wasn't putting my characters at level 20 plus. However, I think it was a good thing to do. I actually think it was a good thing to do. It introduced them all to high-level play. Introduced Theremin to high-level play, and the rest of them trying it out for the first time. They have a lot more cool things that they can do, and it means that they could, like, we can really go all out for the following boss fights, and they can actually deal with some of the big bads of the story on an equal playing field. That was the big insight of that episode. Now, behind the scenes, what happened after that was I went, how the hell do I justify this? And I already had this ongoing thing that Bernie Alamakir was pulling strings behind the scenes to help the story along, to help the characters along. And the deck just became one of these things, like, he wants them to be strong enough to deal with what happens in the next episodes and beyond. So let's talk about the next episode 19 and 20, Bad Devil Dad and Catharsis in Hell. So Theremin was the thread that ended up getting pulled on first. And obviously, in hindsight, I'm really glad that it worked out this way. At the time, it was terrifying. I thought we were going into Matt Shesha and the Yuan T and the Zhen, the werewolf stuff first. And that was not true. That was not what happened. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. But this was good. It was really good. And the Balzable fight, well, oh, here's some behind the scenes stuff for that for sure, was Balzabul's true form is a stat block made by MCDM Productions, our first issue of Arcadia. It's one of the fallen angels that they've got there. Cavial, maybe? I can't remember exactly what they're called, but it's a high CR creature. It does a lot of damage. And it starts fighting these guys, and it's doing a lot, and they haven't done a lot to it. And at the end of that episode, because the fight obviously started near the end of that episode and then continued on in the next one, people started to get really worried and were like, I don't know how we're going to win this fight. And I realized I'd made a damn mistake, because I have stated before in this Roll Insight about the Mockery specifically, about both games, but about the Mockery specifically, that it's not my intention to kill characters, and that there are potential, Deus Ex Machinas to get them out of sticky situations. However, combat needs to feel deadly, and the stakes need to be, ramped up for the sake of a story being told, which is why some of the counters have been very deadly in the past. And so this fight, they were like thinking about it, they're like, I don't think we can win this fight. I had a very frank and conversation with one of the players, where I felt so grateful that they felt that they were able to come to me with this concern, with this, like, I don't feel, I feel anxious, I don't feel comfortable, like I feel like we're gonna lose, I feel like we're going to die, and it's eating at me. And I got the chance to reiterate how the fight is winnable, and it's much more manageable than you think, and it's not my intention to scare you guys or to kill off your characters. It's not my intention. And then what happens in the next episode? They crushed it. There's a very simple sort of gimmick to the fight, which is you separate Balzabul from Theremin, and he no longer has all that power, and he's just a fly guy, and he's not doing very much. He's a slug. And then they killed him and did some cool things. Now, what would have happened if Theremin or Thesia had taken the shard? I don't know. I don't know what would happen if they had done that. We would have figured something out. But that option was definitely there. Asmodeus doing his thing, giving things over. And then episode, yeah, I keep doing that. Episode 21. Oh no. Oh no. I've forgotten what episode 21 is called. This is rough, man. I'm a silly man. Mockeries. Oh, the man behind the curtain. Oh, yes, I know exactly what this episode is. I know exactly what this episode is. So this is the one they go and they do a gig. Dylan's got his little side romance story or whatever, and they meet Emilia Lagasse. Now, this is me reintegrating a storyline. They are not going on a heist. They didn't need to. They got their wish spell. They got the scythe back. And Emilia Lagasse comes over, Miss Prospering, to try to broker a tenuous peace between herself and her family, her family by proxy, and the Mockeries. And there's a good portion of this encounter where I thought they were just going to kill her. I thought they were just going to kill her, which would have been super interesting. But I'm glad things worked out the way that they did. The Lagasses are a complex organization. The Lagasse cabal is a deeply disturbing family, dysfunctional family, and an organization in the world, like a major power player in this setting. And the things that this helped introduce, obviously, were that Emilia was not necessarily on the same page all the time on how to do things as the rest of her family, but it also like it helps to tie in that character who doesn't get to be part of the story anymore, and sets them up to have more of a less of a straightforward rather relationship with the Lagasses, which I have found to be very interesting. Going forward, I have found to be very interesting indeed. Okay, I think that I've just covered all of the reserve list and all of the mockeries. So what I'm going to do is super quick. I'm going to just go over a little bit of the editing stuff. So obviously we've been doing one episode a week instead of two. That's just the way that goes. It's more work, and learning GIMP, learning how to create new overlays. Hopefully those look a lot better. I think they look a lot better. getting the new intro, getting the new logo, all of that stuff has been super, I think, important for everything going forward. Getting the right editing software in place to go forward and make the next seasons, to make the next shows that we do on the channel look even better and are making them even more enjoyable to watch and or listen to, I think is really important. I can't remember exactly all the things I said at the beginning of the video that I was going to talk about, but yeah. So editing these two shows, it just takes a lot of time, and I'm not doing them to the degree I could be doing them. I'm not putting as much polish on them as I could be putting on them. The reason for that is I want to just keep up a schedule. I want to just keep up a schedule of having one come out every week, of having a video come out every week. And as of the recording of this video, we are 3 weeks out from the finales of both shows, playing both shows, not releasing them on YouTube. We're about to wrap up the Mockeries, and we're about to wrap up the Reserve List as well. Both of those campaigns will be coming to a close. Now, this is just a personal thing, but I tend to keep my campaigns at around 20 sessions. The Mockeries will be 22 sessions. The Reserve List will be fewer than that. I believe it'll be about 19 or so. Just because I've been able to meet more with the Mockeries. The reason for bringing them to a close is partially because those stories are coming to a close, and partially because I need to be doing less. And this is going to help free up some time, which is really important for me. I've got lots of other projects that I want to be getting on with. I want to put a video up on my personal channel every once in a while. I want to continue writing. I write novels and things as well. So, all that being said, we still have several weeks of Reserve List and Mockeries left for you to enjoy at around the same quality as the latest episodes 20 and 21 of the respective shows. Around that quality. Sometimes there'll be music, sometimes there won't. The new overlays will be used, and you can expect what comes next to have a higher production value, because that'll be really, really good. There's a lot of stuff that's really exciting coming up in these two shows. I think that they just ramp and ramp and ramp into their finales. It's really good stuff. It's really good stuff, and I really hope that you have enjoyed watching thus far and enjoy watching these series come to their conclusions. And know that this is not the end for these groups, for these players, for their characters, for the world. Not at all. The stories can just be broken up into seasons. So, oh yeah, we've got the Battle of the Bands thing that we're going to try to sort out as well. We're going to actually try to do that. We'll see how we can do that, and that will be the real finale, of course, of the two. Or it'll be more like they'll each end in their own way, and then there will be like the big Battle of the Bands event. So that is very exciting. Guys, I think that is it. I think that is all that I have to say for now. This has been Roll Insight with me. I hope that you found insight behind the scenes of all the stuff that's happened so far. I think you can expect another one of these a few more episodes, a few weeks from now, and then probably I will try to do one with each of the casts after the shows are done as well. So there will be more of a group one. I'm not going to promise that that's going to happen, but it would be nice. It would be nice to try to make that happen. So Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.